America's speech, unexpected.
Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Erica. What speech is this for you? Is this actually your first speech? Okay, then I'll be more gentle. No, overall, Erica, I thought you did a great job for an icebreaker. Actually, the icebreaker is one of my favorite speeches because it gives us an opportunity to get a little insight on where you come from and where a member comes from and their experiences. So I thought you did a great job. Keep in mind that the icebreaker speech is a very broad thing. I mean, you can start from the baby up to, I mean, you can go as far as you want, but I like how you came up with your title. You mentioned 13-year-old me, which I thought was good because it gave some room there of context where you're kind of starting and what that young girl was thinking about. And I thought your title was appropriate as far as unexpected, because you talked about, you know, your husband is unexpected. He's not the type of guy you thought you would be with, but you found you fell in love with this guy unexpectedly. Going to Spain, coming back to Sacramento. What else was that? Playing kickball. You know, just something you probably didn't think you would do as an adult, but you did. And I liked that. It was, overall, I thought it was very, it kind of moved around, but it was very organic. I noticed when you first came up here, you were looking at your notes. I don't know if you had bullet points or you had stuff written out. I really couldn't tell. But your note reading wasn't distracting. But keep in mind that whenever you pull your eyes away from the audience, you disconnect. It's kind of like hanging up the phone. So just keep that in the back of your mind. You, at a point in that talk, you became very comfortable. And what I mean by that is you weren't really worrying about your notes. And that's the place when you do future talks, I want you to try to go to, where it's just a conversation. It's just Heather and I having a conversation. We're going to San Diego, we're going to Spain, and we're just talking. That's where we want to get with our talks, where you just come up, you know, you may glance down a little bit, but it is trusting yourself to move forward and go with the thought that pops into your mind, and trusting that. But overall, I thought you did a really good job. I don't really have any bad things to say about it because you didn't do anything wrong. I just keep in mind notes, you know, I keep them to a minimum if possible. I mean, in other words, let's say you have notes. I'm looking at you, glance down, boom, come back up as quickly as you can. Okay? This way, on your notes, if you just have like one word or 2 or 3 words where it triggers a thought, that's really, I think, where notes are appropriate. Just something real quick so you can come back up to, because if you're reading a long line, now you got to go, No, just come down, boom, and then come back up to your audience. But overall, I thought you did a great job, and congrats on giving your first icebreaker speech. Okay. All right.
Next, please help me welcome Wajih, who's going to evaluate Heather's speech.
Heather, that was a great speech. Just like Nick said, you need to get some weed out. I remember it's just a short story, but yeah, I hated pulling out weed from my dad. He always used to make me do that, but I'm doing it to my son now. So. But yeah, I like your how you used 2 aspects. One was verbal and the other was the presentation. I think if you didn't have the presentation, we would have had a harder time understanding what you're talking about. So that part I really liked. And as the topic too, weed warriors, what are you talking about? But yeah, when you started, it was okay. That's what you mean. The slides, you only had 2 or 3. That also was a really good aspect of the presentation. Sometimes when you have too many slides up, people start focusing more towards the slides than what you're talking about. So it kept the focus on you as a person and less on the presentation. So I just looked at the slide a few times, but I was mainly paying attention to what you were saying. And that helped with all the technical description you were giving, and the way you gave it, it was nicely done. I do understand now what vernal pools are. I've heard the word before, but never knew what they are, and it's really interesting. really love your enthusiasm. You could see you were geeking out. I would do the same if I was talking about electronics or something or some new gadgets, but the way you talked about it really put that emphasis into making the public understanding what you're talking about. So that was really nice. Other than that, I think you slowly went through the topic, didn't get too technical where no one understood what you're talking, and you did a really good job. And also, there's not really any critiques or bad items. Critiques. One thing I think the time went a little over, and with the presentation, there's always the part where you're trying to set up the presentation, and that takes time. But that really wasn't your fault. You could have. So if it was your room, you would have had it set up before. Other than that, yeah, I think you did a good job, and thank you for that education.